Okay, our next session will be called AI-assisted learning and assessment. This is one hot topic every scholars and educationists are talking about today. And who is the best moderator for this session? None other than Mr. Ng Keng Huat, the country director, of Cambridge Assessment International Education. The floor is yours, Mr. Ng.
Hello, participants. Good morning. Welcome to the next session, which will be on AI-assisted learning and assessment. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce two distinguished speakers. The first one being Jay Atwal, who is Head of Sales and Customer Engagement of BKSB, based in UK, and the company specializes in online English and maths teaching and learning. Our next speaker is Mr. Sean Tillerson, who is the co-founder and CEO of EduSync, one of the world's leading online assessment and remote proctoring companies based in New York, but he travels quite extensively through Brazil and also India. So Sean's topic will be on the future of online testing and remote proctoring, while Jay will talk about innovation and technology, online English and maths. I will pass the floor over to both the speakers, please. Thank you.
So just briefly about who we are. So BKSB was established over 20 years ago and was born out of the UK education sector itself. Now the goal for creating our platform was to identify ability levels in English and maths and highlight where skill gaps existed for each student. We did this because we recognised that no person learns at the same pace or at the same level. That's whether they're in the same class or even doing the same job. We find that in the classroom it's very easy for students to fall into the gaps of the system, of being overwhelmed, or at the other end of the spectrum, not challenged enough. So how can you maximise the potential of an individual if you don't understand where their starting point is and where they need support? We've worked with a diverse range of organisations from FE colleges, NHS trusts, prisons, armed forces, and thousands of training providers, schools, and corporate organisations, all of which have different requirements. However, they all have the same shared investment. and that's to improve the English and math skills of their cohort. We believe that learning should be a lifelong commitment in industry as well as education. And I'd like to share with you some examples of how this process of individualised learning and also the use of online technology is deployed successfully across the UK for English and maths. So why is online learning so important as part of the teaching and learning mix? Obviously, the recent pandemic has brought this to the forefront of everyone's mind. The World Economic Forum stated there were 1.2 billion children out of the classroom in 186 countries over the last 12 months. For this reason, organisations have had to adapt to ensure they continue to deliver their provision remotely. And this has been done via language apps, virtual tutoring and video conferencing tools. The benefits of a blended approach existed long before this pandemic, and if we just move over to the slide now, we can see the reasons why. Increase in student engagement. Studies have shown that students can retain between 25 and 60% more information when learning online. This is mostly due to students being able to learn more efficiently in this medium. E-learning platforms also allow students to learn at their own pace, going back and rereading, skipping, accelerating through modules that they understand. The modern students spend much of their time using technology, including social media. They want an accessible, tailored and personalised experience with instant feedback. And this individualised learning cannot be managed purely by a tutor. The workloads and classroom sizes for educators mean this is impossible. Assessment systems such as BKSB are learner-centric, motivational and celebrate achievement, and most importantly allow for education providers to support their learners more effectively. This sort of individualised learning leads to self-regulation, so the student knows where they are and where they need to get to, and are able to navigate at their own path with the help from their tutors. This is a crucial skill in education, work and life. Enhanced accessibility. Mobile learning is accessible at any time, at any place. Having a robust distance learning model will give education providers an edge in the market. It also facilitates this idea of lifelong learning for adults, as it allows for people to study flexibly from anywhere and fit their studies around their commitments. It is accessible 24/7. Offering new teaching and learning techniques. Classroom software and apps allow tutors to further differentiate their teaching. If a student hits a wall, for example, quizzes and engaging e-learning can approach a task from a new direction and stimulate brain activity. It also allows for flipped learning, so teachers can set and track homework activity, and it keeps staff and students connected. Decrease workload and automating processes. Most of the leading online learning applications track and monitor, in some cases mark, student work, and they provide instant access to analytics. This data allows tutors to monitor student progression and intervene with target setting. Future-proofing the next generation. One of the most crucial benefits of e-learning and embracing technology in the classroom is that it future-proofs individuals, preparing them for current and future industry. It is key for educators to embrace that e-learning is designed to facilitate and improve learning experience and support the tutor rather than replacing them. The following process has been used by thousands of schools and training providers, as well as almost every college in the UK and Australia for over a decade. This process starts with the initial assessment. The initial assessment is the first point of contact that an organisation will have with a student when it comes to their English and Maths course. It takes around 15 to 20 minutes for English and the same for Maths, and it's designed around normally 20 questions to give you an instant idea of that learner's starting point and, more importantly, the level that they are working towards. The next step is the diagnostic assessment. Now, this is a slightly longer assessment, however it tells you the skills gaps and strengths and weaknesses of that learner. We believe that after the initial and diagnostic assessments, you know what level they're working towards and where their skill gaps are. And from this point, you've got an excellent starting point to begin the learning journey with that student. This is then followed with learning resources, which are prioritised for the learner skill gaps. And We use a variety of mediums, so this could be videos, information, self-marking questions, hints and tips, in order to get that core learning content across to the learner. Following the learning resources, we find it's really crucial to track the progress that a student is making. And here we have progress checks, which are small assessments. They use the same assessment engine as the initial and diagnostic assessment, but these will now re-evaluate that learner's level for each of the small core modules within the course. So here we can see their starting point and where they are following the time the learner spent looking at the learning content. Once that learner has used the progress checks and the learning resources to get to the level they need to be, it finally ends with the exam practice. So these are revision tools and exam style questions that the learner can work through, and it gives them hints and tips such as how long to spend on certain types of questions and how many marks are expected to be gained from each type of question, to really help them prepare for their functional skills in English and maths. Student activity, progression, achievement is continually available for tutor monitoring. It really helps organisations track and record information instantly. And this is a requirement for all publicly funded and regulated education providers. I'd like to finish with a little bit of information about the technology behind these assessments, which are so embedded in the sector here in the UK. We use something called item response theory. This works via algorithms which are deployed throughout the BKSB assessment and allow for constant adjustments to be made to a student's ability estimate following every question. Rather than being random, the best question for each candidate is automatically generated after their previous responses have been analysed, and this is an instant process. Therefore, BKSB will contain questions specifically generated for each candidate with artificial intelligence to create the most suitable experience for them. The academic consensus is that IRT, item response theory, is by far the most reliable and accurate method for testing someone's ability. To ensure we can measure how difficult a question is, we have used responses that have been submitted for each question to calculate the pass rate for each ability group. The values attributed to each question are validated through BKSB's dataset, which contains hundreds of millions of student answers. We estimate that 150 million BKSB assessments are taken every year. This level of assessment accuracy is invaluable to education providers in helping ensure that students are suitably supported in those areas which they require the most help, and that learning gaps are closed off accurately and efficiently while keeping the student engaged and motivated. So thank you everyone for your time. I hope our presentation, along with others you will see over the next 2 days of this forum, will help everyone engage in recognising the importance of technology in education and how it is deployed so successfully within teaching and learning environment here in the UK. And why government, education and industry must pull together to not only find innovative solutions for teaching and learning in this new normal, but also to collaborate in finding ways to close the digital divide.
Now this is the story of a company trying to change education for everybody. When it comes to testing, it's never really fun for students or teachers or anyone. We made a platform to digitize exams used by institutions across the land. They put up their tests with our authoring tool to administer at scale to their entire school. To guarantee that students aren't able to cheat, we made a proctoring tool that they can't defeat. Powered by AI and certified staff, we can test anything from English to math. 300,000 students know our name as we revolutionize the assessment game. So let's have a chat, Zoom call with a drink. My name is Sean, founder CEO, EduSync.
Hey guys, Sean here. I'm just going to share my screen with you and we'll jump right in. So today, I'm Sean, co-founder and CEO of EduSync, and today we're going to talk about the future of online testing and remote proctoring. But first, I want to tell you about Hannah. Hannah is the head of assessment for Berlitz, one of the largest language training companies on earth, and Hannah has a serious problem. Berlitz has millions of students around the world, and when it comes to testing, all testing has previously been done with pen and paper or on multiple choice tests using Google Docs. Most essays and spoken testing, especially around language, are done via email, Google Docs, telephone interviews. There are no reporting tools for her and her staff to either gather results and compile them and share them with other stakeholders. And there's no security when testing students remotely. And this is where my company comes in. We provide 3 very specific services for educational institutions: a tool to create and issue exams online, artificial intelligence-driven remote proctoring, which is what we'll speak about today, also known as remote invigilation, and detailed analysis and reporting for teachers and administrators. One of the ways we work is we actually allow for institutions to create their own tests on our platform. Regardless of what kind of language you're doing your testing in or what kind of content you're using, we actually use a layer of artificial intelligence here to help automatically assemble exams. This is just one way in which AI can impact your lives as educators and schools in general, and I'll dive deeper into this in the future. We also offer a remote proctoring or remote invigilation service using artificial intelligence to basically learn what students would do in the event that they were going down the path of academic dishonesty. And we use a staff of certified individuals to actually help work together with the AI to make sure that students aren't cheating. Currently, we have over 450,000 students around the world and work with some really large institutional partners, some of the largest language training companies in the world, as well as various universities and even tech companies, all using our assessment products. Just a little bit of background on myself before we dive in. I was born and raised in New York City. I now live in Mumbai and also spend time in Brazil. I'm a computer science and economics major, and I've been in the startup world for around 7 years, going on 8, mostly focused on growth economies and testing online. Now, before we jump into the topic of today's conversation, I want to talk about Education 4.0, something that many people on this call have heard of previously and know a little bit about. Just the progression of education over the course of the last 100, 200 years or so. Education 1.0 was really focused on children learning for specific jobs. Once people began to learn how to read and write more commonly around the world, more advanced workers were needed. Education 3.0 really jump-started with the advent and adoption of computers, specifically in institutions. And Education 4.0 is where the internet will actually change how students are learning and how they consume content and how they are taught because of the interconnectivity of each person. However, there's still a problem, as most institutions are still focused on Education 2.0. And in my belief, we're now on the verge of Education 5.0 using artificial intelligence. But just to jump in and give some examples here. Education 3.0, using technology as a tool. One of my former ventures, this company here, Magnus Gyan, our objective was to actually use hardware, tablets specifically, 7-inch and 9-inch, with embedded software that was very affordable to actually help educational institutions administer different types of content, even testing, as well as learning materials through the device. This is a great example of technology being used in a way that can help both students as well as educational institutions, all done through the use of hardware primarily. Education 4.0, leveraging connectivity. This is where a service like what I'm currently working on, EduSync, comes into play. Learners can take a test on their computer or mobile device, in many cases a spoken or written exam, which cannot easily be evaluated by a computer, although there are some ways to do this, which I'll jump into momentarily. Using the interconnectivity of the internet, we can then distribute those exercises to professors, either working at our partner institutions or even within our institution. And these professors or evaluators can actually score exams remotely from their phone or from their computer, and the students get their results back in 24 hours. This is a perfect example of Education 4.0 in practice and how the internet can help facilitate otherwise slow and inefficient processes. Now, on to Education 5.0, using artificial intelligence. So before I jump in, what do we mean by artificial intelligence? When you hear the term AI, most people think of this guy. However, officially speaking, statistically speaking, over 85% of businesses, at least in the US and UK, are now using artificial intelligence. And in reality, it's more like this charming fellow here. In reality, artificial intelligence is meant to work with us as educators and actually make our lives easier as well as helping us improve our methods with little to no additional effort. Artificial intelligence, the actual definition, is the simulation of human intelligence in machines so that the humans can actually mimic our actions. Now, some examples of this. Computer adaptive testing is something that I'm sure many of you have heard of before. The idea is basically you put hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of test items into a database. You can then actually tag each question, each test item, and as you have users taking the tests, based on their responses, they get fed different items of varying difficulty, varying tags, and the computer is constantly recording the results of each item and actually learning and adapting to the user. So this is a very common form of AI being used in the classroom, especially around testing, and it works very well. Now, a lot of algorithms that use this are based on this concept called item response theory, but the whole idea is that you can tag each question with specific characteristics and use that to adapt the exam as students take it. One of the ways in which we're currently using artificial intelligence is what we call fraud detection or remote invigilation. Using the webcam and different technologies that monitor the students' activities through the webcam, through the microphone, you can actually teach the machine to identify suspicious behavior. You can also use photo recognition and more advanced technologies to detect certain applications being opened during the test, say Zoom or other screen sharing services. The whole idea is that the machine is used before involving a human being to make the process more efficient and quicker. Other ways that in which AI has been used in education, analyzing content and how students are consuming it and how that reflects on their tests, personalizing content, personalizing learning, as well as grading, constructive feedback to students, and even predicting what's going to happen. A couple of interesting case studies around how AI is being used. One is from IBM, using artificial intelligence within at-risk schools in a lower socioeconomic area in the U.S. based on previous attendance records, extracurriculars, parents' income, and a few other data points. Their Watson or their artificial intelligence engine was able to predict within 95% how many students were going to drop out. So this is the kind of information that can help schools pick up on problems before they happen and help keep students in school. Another interesting company that we came across, this company uses artificial intelligence to help institutions predict their enrollment numbers, as well as improve financial aid and even boost security and retention of students within the school. Other ways in which AI can be used, which we're now looking at adopting as well, or in the process of adopting, using artificial intelligence to evaluate written tests by training it on essays done over the course of years. These algorithms can then learn to evaluate grammatical structures and vocab usage, as well as with spoken testing. So for any language teachers out there, you know how complicated it is to test someone's spoken abilities. Using artificial intelligence, you can process this audio. This field is actually called natural language processing. And using technology, make sure to become more efficient at doing this kind of testing online and actually use the machine to evaluate spoken language proficiency. Now, this again uses item response theory, but the real underlying technology is machine learning that's constantly processing and learning what a high-scoring spoken assessment should sound like. Now, this is a quote that I wanted to end on because I think this is very important for everyone to internalize, and we fully believe this at EduSync, and this is why we are building technology to help educators. Technology can't replace teachers, but teachers who use technology will replace those who don't. And that is why Hannah, the head of assessment at Berlitz, when she uses EduSync, she becomes happier. Thanks for your time, and see you soon.
Thanks a lot for your presentation, both Jay and Sean. I would like to pose the first question from participants to Jay first, yeah? Question 1. Could you tell us briefly how BKSB is embedded in the classroom? How does it work day to day for a teacher? Jay, could you please enlighten the participants?
Yeah, absolutely. So BKSB is used in a variety of ways, both in the UK and in Australia. whether that be in schools, colleges, and training providers, to support learners in developing their knowledge before they take their English and maths qualifications. So it's mainly used for individualized learning in the classroom, or for homework, or for preparing for lessons. Now, how that looks day to day is based on the particular area within BKSP that's being used. So I'll give you a few examples. So to start with, the initial assessment, that's a baseline assessment at the very beginning of the year to gauge an understanding of where that learner is starting from. Following that, there is a diagnostic assessment. Now, this diagnostic assessment, we don't say it's a test where a student has to prove their knowledge. It's for a tutor to understand where the skill gaps or weaknesses are. So this informs the tutors, the management, of where the focus needs to be for each particular learner during that term. See, the issue that we find is that tutors sometimes only have maybe an hour or so per week, which is dedicated towards English and maths. So by using this methodology, you can really focus the learning into the areas that are really relevant for each student. So where time is of the essence, it still allows the key areas to be focused on. And with that as well, we find that reporting is really important. So reporting is used a lot in all of our customers, and there's a huge range of reports based on what we think the organization needs to be able to see, whether that's for each individual learner, or just as importantly, group performance is really vital as well, to get a good understanding of the organization as a whole and performance throughout your learners. And then finally, we see a lot of tutors assigning specific areas to each student for homework or flipped learning, which can then all be marked online, and the tutor can report on that to check whether students have done their homework and whether they've performed how they need to do so.
Thank you, Jay. I would like to pose the next question to Sean. Sean's question, actually, there are three parts, yeah? You put it into one question. Oh, before I forgot, yeah? Many Malaysian teachers know what is proctoring. It is a very Americanized term, yeah? We call it invigilation, yeah? Just to share with participants, yeah? So actually, it's remote invigilation. It's more, what they call a more familiar term with teachers in Malaysia and this part of the world. Proctoring is more US. Yeah? I learned that as examiner myself. Yeah? So I'll pose the next question to you, Sean. In terms of implementation, do teachers or admin need to have an entirely new system? Do you integrate with existing LMS platforms and other systems? How exactly do you work with your partners? Over to you, Sean.
Thanks for the prompts. So yeah, generally speaking, over the last few years, especially in the last year and a half, where a lot of schools who were never forced to use technology have now adopted new systems, many of which start with the learning management system, whether it's Blackboard, Canvas, or Moodle. Because of this kind of rapid adoption and change that's occurred, there's no longer a possibility to operate independently and alone. And we're seeing this happen across the ecosystem, and this also goes for all of the solutions that EduSync offers, from the testing facilities as well as the remote invigilation. The integrations with the existing systems of schools is fundamentally important to be able to operate. So in our case, the way that we typically work with our partners is we examine what's going on under the hood, so to speak, of the car of the school. So understanding what kind of platform they're currently using, if any, and then we work to integrate deeply with these platforms. This actually helps in a number of ways, not only just from allowing teachers and admins to continue using the platform they're already familiar with without having to spend time to learn an entirely new system, but it also helps in terms of the student experience, especially when they're taking their exams. Integrating with these platforms allows you to build on top of the existing infrastructure, as well as the existing flows that a Moodle or a Canvas or a Blackboard already offers. A lot of these tools have a range, a full suite of solutions, including testing solutions and admin platforms, and integrating with them actually allows you to build on top and create an even more robust solution. So as an example, in terms of how we do this and how this impacts the students, oftentimes working in isolation, the students have to download additional tools and go through additional steps without having the software actually work towards implementing that. When you're doing an integration with the learning management system, in our case, the student can't actually start their exam until they've turned on the remote invigilation tool. And while this seems like a minor thing, when you're doing this at scale with thousands or tens of thousands of students at one time, a minor change like this, where the student is forced to do it by the software, actually saves hours of manual work and troubleshooting on the side of admins and partners. And as things continue to progress, I only see these types of integrations becoming more important. And it's our job as the technology provider to lighten the load for teachers and admins. And I think we do a pretty good job when we partner with institutions.
Thank you, Sean, for a very comprehensive answer. I will move back to Jay for the next question. From what I can tell, many teachers are intrigued by how widely BKSB is used in the UK and Australia. What gives BKSB an edge over the vast range of online teaching resources available at the moment? Jay, would you like to answer the question? Thank you.
Okay, so I think due to the extensive research and the ability that we have within BKSB around assessment has allowed us to create a very robust and effective assessment, which is the diagnostic assessment, which highlights the skill gaps for a learner. And is vital to BKSB's success. Individual skill gaps before the tutor even starts learning or teaching allows them to gear their teaching towards those needs rather than just blanket teaching against the curriculum for the whole students, because we all know that students learn at different paces and are at different abilities to each other. So without the diagnostic assessment, you would only know whether the student has fallen into these gaps by putting them through mock papers. And then with BKSB, with all the focus given to the areas which they need help the most, you can work through this during the term, gear lesson plans and individualized assignments throughout the learning needs of the classroom. So as I mentioned earlier as well, there are many studies that show that students are more engaged when learning online. So for kind of £1 to £2 per learner for the whole year, the cost is marginal, certainly less than the printing cost for paper worksheets and then tutors' time having to manually mark the classroom quizzes and other tests used to gauge kind of attainment for their students.
Thank you, Jay. I will finish the last question. Another question for Sean. How do you see the role of artificial intelligence changing as more and more educational institutions adopt more advanced technological solutions? How will this impact educators in the future? Over to you, Sean.
Thanks. So this is a great question and something that comes up all the time when we're speaking even to partners about adopting our solutions. And as I mentioned in my presentation, there's a general fear of artificial intelligence and technology virtually eating away at the jobs of educators. And, we at EduSync are firm believers in the sense that technology will not replace teachers, but teachers that use it will replace teachers that do not. The same goes for artificial intelligence. In fact, the statistics show that, I think over 85 or 90% of businesses, at least in the US and UK, are already using some form of artificial intelligence in their day-to-day operations. And as the whole world has changed in the last 18 months, these solutions are going to become widespread. And the idea is really not to replace the human being or replace the individual. The idea is to make our jobs easier. And a lot of these real life examples of artificial intelligence being adopted in education come from, for instance, automated assessments or allowing teachers to take a general overview of an assessment that was just deployed, and the machine can actually inform the teacher or the educator about what areas they need to continue focusing on to make sure that the scores of students improve in the future. Now, this is a very harmless application, but a very powerful one. And again, when looking at operating at scale, I think the role of artificial intelligence is only going to become more important in the future. And I also think there's going to be a dramatic shift in the way that people perceive the importance of AI moving forward. I think in 5 years from now, we're all going to look back and wonder how we ever lived without it, because not only does it save time, it also saves effort and allows us as educators to focus on what we do best, and that is educating.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jay. So with that, we come to the close of today's session for this topic on innovation and technology, use of AI-assisted learning and assessment. So would you all like to join me, for a round of applause for both Jay and Sean? Thank you. I'll pass it back to the MC. Thank you.